Hello, and thank you for joining. My name is Khaled Fattal, and this is a very special podcast today because America and American stakeholders, businesses, critical national infrastructure, and citizens, and those in the West will be facing unprecedented cyber attacks, and this is why. Sadly, I am now laying this prediction. We are embarking on a new era where Geo-Poli-Cyber Warfare and attacks on American interests and Western interests will escalate to a level unknown before. And my warning to you, if you're a stakeholder and has something to protect, what you have is not sufficient to defend you. And for those of you who are hearing the context or the concept or the term Geo-Poli-Cyber for this first time, I will provide a link in the video. I created this in 2011 and 2012, and it is cyber attacks that are not financially motivated, but political, ideological, etc., etc. The stuff that are designed to bring down a nation states economically and politically down to its knees. So for some of you who might think that I'm scaremongering, and unless you have been living under a rock somewhere around the world, you probably would have heard that American President Biden, 3 days ago, announced that he was authorizing Ukraine the ability to use American long-range missiles to strike deep inside Russia. This news had repercussions on a global scale. Not only in the United States, those who supported Kamala and voted for the Democrats were wondering, what in the world are you doing, Sleepy Joe? The reactions all over the world has been very, very concerning. But more importantly, look at the reaction that came from Ukraine literally within a day. Ukraine fires 6 US-made long-range missiles into Russia for the first time ever. Now, you may or may not have recalled that in the last 2.5 years of the Russia-Ukraine war, Russia had stipulated that if the US authorizes the use of long-range missiles to Ukraine to hit deep inside Russia, this will be a game changer. And President Biden, whatever his reasons are, we can get into that separately. That's what he's authorized. And now this is the new scale at where the potential World War III nuclear confrontation is now escalated to unprecedented levels. However, President Putin is not going to sit there and watch politely. And this is why. So no scaremongering. This is real. As a result, Russia, Putin himself, has actually lowered the bar for Russia and its use of nuclear weapons as a result of this Ukraine attack using US long-range missiles. So let me bring something to your attention, ladies and gentlemen. President Biden clearly, and this is opinion as an American, but also my professional opinion, he has clearly showed us that the office of the president is bought and sold by the special interest in America. And I'm not just talking about the military-industrial complex only. With the last few days he has, as president, to authorize this is escalating the conflict to new levels. President Putin is not going to sit there and watch politely. Now, it's possible some of President Biden donors and supporters in the military-industrial complex wanted to know if US long-range missiles were used on Russia, how will they perform? So this is really like guinea pig stuff. to determine how good are the Russian defenses against the technology that the US has given to Ukraine. Now, you can understand why they might think that and they'd want to learn that, but you can't want to know this at the risk of escalating the world to a nuclear Armageddon. I know you love money, you want power, but it can't be that. And Sleepy Joe cannot be that freaking dumb, that stupid to escalate it to this level. But the bottom line here is the reason why it never escalated to the kind of confrontation was not because our people on the side of the West, the US, the German, the French, the poodles of the United States, or Boris Johnson, the super poodle of the United States, were not trying to escalate it. It's because the Russians didn't want to escalate it to the level it becomes a nuclear confrontation or a NATO-Russia war. But here's what I am going to tell you why America and why the West and their stakeholders, that's businesses, critical national infrastructure, and citizens, and economic interest in the US and the West will be under unprecedented attacks as a result of this action. And I'm going to tell you why. And my warning to you, if you're a stakeholder and has something to protect, what you have is not sufficient to defend you. But let me take you to NATO convention and Article 5, which all NATO members, the NATO convention, all NATO members who are joining sign on this. And Article 5 is really the crux of the matter. And let me read it to you, and so you'll understand why I'm saying and why I'm predicting what I'm predicting. Article 5, it says, this is the NATO Charter. The parties agree that an armed attack against one or more of them in Europe or North America shall be considered an attack against them all, and consequently, they agree that if such an armed attack occurs, each of them in exercise of the right of individual or collective self-defense recognized by Article 51 of the Charter of the United Nations, will assist the party or parties so attacked by taking forthwith, individually and in concert with other parties, such action as it deems necessary, including the use of armed force to restore and maintain the security of the North Atlantic area. In a nutshell, what you've been hearing, or if you haven't read it, Russia, had it chosen in the last 2.5+ years in the Ukraine war to treat that suppliers of arms to Ukraine are integral part of the war, and for example, chose to fire missiles on the manufacturing plant in the UK of British-made missiles or weapons, or fired at German installations that manufacture or send weapons to Ukraine. That would have been deemed an attack on a NATO member, and therefore would have triggered Article 5, and all NATO members would now be declaring war on Russia. Russia chose not to do any of that stuff. But now the escalation has reached a new level. President Biden, after 2.5 years of the Ukraine war, has decided in the last few days of his presidency, decided to authorize Ukraine to fire deep inside Russia. And this is a red flag. So here's what Russia, in my humble and professional opinion, will not do. Russia is not going to attack American installations or German installations or British installations, because this will trigger Article 5 of the NATO convention. However, President Putin is not going to sit there and watch politely. What you will start seeing is a response to this escalation from the US with increased cyber attacks from the side of Russia or its friends or allies or cyber groups to hit the West where it hurts the most. These are examples of Geo-Poli-Cyber Warfare and attacks that have happened in the past and which will be duplicated many times over as a result of this action by President Biden. This is a story that Survivability News published on July 8th, 2021, titled Major Internet Sites such as Amazon, Guardian, New York Times, and Reddit shut down. Is it a glitch or a repeat of the 2016 Dyn Geo-Poli-Cyber attack? This is another post by Survivability News earlier this month, titled UK-Russia Geo-Poli-Cyber Warfare escalates. Pro-Russian hacker group cyber attacks Britain's banks, councils, and jewel in the crown BAE Systems in retaliation to UK's £120 million aid for drones to protect Ukraine grain corridor. So if anybody thinks that we have our defenses in the West, and I'm speaking here as an American, if any of you think that we have the best technology in the world and we're solid and we protected, blah, 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 go find another game, because we have never been so vulnerable. And let me give you an example. It's very possible that certain cyber attacks on critical national infrastructure or internet services or on internet domain services or IP addresses that would be able to shut down economics, day-to-day or minute-to-minute affairs of people's daily lives and economics, and their ability to transact and use credit cards or fill up their gas to go and pick up their children from school. And that could be disrupted not only for hours, but possibly for days. And any attack like this would not trigger Article 5, because Article 5 is specific about military attacks, not cyber. And if you recall, if you didn't know, it was the Russians, President Putin, who actually urged the US a few years back to work together to come up with a cyber treaty that creates rules of engagement for everybody. And the US government declined to want to do that because the US felt that, we're ahead of the game. Why should we equalize by letting you get an advantage because we're ahead of you? I don't think they realize that, if anything, we as America, as Americans, as infrastructure, as economics, are so dependent on technology and internet services to move our economy forward that little things can be utilized, and I'm not going to do details, that could actually bring all that to a halt and damage us economically. So I don't know what President Biden was thinking, who's advising him. We know he's sleepy. We know he's stupid. I'm sorry. And more to the fact that you are owned by the special interest who whispered in your ear to make that decision so they can make their benefits of whatever it is. But at the end, you're putting American lives, livelihoods, and economic prosperity at stake. Those of you who told you, President Biden, who told you that this is one way to make it difficult for President Trump to actually fulfill a promise he made about the Ukraine war, that he could end it in one day, this action is probably sugar-coated that to make it difficult for President Trump to fulfill that promise. But along the way, you're creating such enormous risks to America and Americans and the prosperity of all of us. And the risk of nuclear Armageddon is so much closer than ever before. I can't fathom in the life of me any responsible president who swears an oath when he takes office would do something as stupid as this. But you did. So clearly, you're not only stupid, but you're also ignorant. And, I used to say, this is not it's meant to be funny, but it's so true. In private conversations and friendly conversations, I used to say to people, the Egyptians mastered the science of mummifying the dead 3,000 years ago. American scientists and special interest people have mastered the science and the art of mummifying the living. We have a president that appears to be alive because his heart is pumping, but he is making decisions that do not represent our interest and creating catastrophic prospects for us in America. So my warning to you, if you are an American business, if you are an American operator of any critical national infrastructure, if you think that the cybersecurity you have in place is good enough for you, be aware. What we are embarking on is Geo-Poli-Cyber Warfare on unprecedented scale. And this is going to be the thing that can bring our economy to its knees. And for those of you who are hearing the context or the concept or the term Geo-Poli-Cyber for this first time, I will provide a link in the video, and it is cyber attacks that are not financially motivated, but political, ideological, etc., the stuff that are designed to bring down a nation states economically and politically down to its knees. And if you go to survivability.news, our news platform, and just click on the button that says Geo-Poli-Cyber, you will see the many topics of attacks and events around the world that qualify under that definition that are not mitigatable with the current strategic mitigation strategies you have. So my warning to you here is, and this is just like I predicted all of this, people tell me you're the visionary, I predicted all of this many years ago. Sadly, I am now laying this prediction. We are embarking on a new era where Geo-Poli-Cyber Warfare and attacks on American interest and Western interest will escalate to a level unknown before. I see nothing but escalation, and God save us. If you want to know more, reach out. And until then, stay safe, stay aware. And all I can say is I'm not optimistic, but we have to do what we need to do. Take care. Bye-bye.